my background noise?
This meeting is being recorded.
No? Okay, so
No.
we're good. All right, it started to record. All right, so welcome to day 2 for our second recording. Today we're going to be talking, well, first of all, my name is Herman Daniels. This is Mr. Agassini from Agassini Real Estate. Did I say it right?
Yes, Agassini Real Estate.
Agassini Real Estate. And we're going to be talking about escrow today.
Yes, going back to what we were talking just a few minutes ago. Just tell me what you understand about escrow, which is done in the US.
From my understanding with escrow, it's technically a third party. So if you end up, say, making an offer to a house, you have the purchase offer. If the owners of the house accept your purchase offer, then you open escrow. So escrow is a third party, and that third party ends up being, you could say, kind of like a referee, where you have conditions that need to be met. So how I guess you could say it protects the seller is in the part that you made an offer that you ended up placing a deposit, but instead of the seller holding the money, this third party holds the money. And it just means that you're serious to move forward into the purchasing transaction. And I guess the reason why people, I mean, you can buy property without going through escrow. You're just dealing directly with the owner. But the reason why people feel comfortable through escrow is because, this third party, kind of like referee, it's not representing the seller and it's not representing the buyer. They're just a neutral party making sure that the terms are being met on both sides.
Correct. Well, the third party, as I understand, it's protecting both parties. One is because one is depositing money, the buyer, and the other one knows that that money, it will be executed or deposited into his account, is hers, once either the sale goes through or if they default on if the agreement is, if I back up on the deal, some of them is going to get penalized. Well, that's the way they do it here in Mexico. But now let's go back to the escrow. I know the escrow holds money. That's what he does. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So here in Mexico, we don't use escrow. The 10% or at least a down payment is paid directly to the owner, the seller. And he has to go through an agreement, a contract that is called promissory note. This is the beginning of the sale. Okay. So when we are dealing with a Mexican seller and an American buyer, the buyer is looking for this security of their money. They usually don't want to put up front 10%, knowing that they're going to have to give that 10% to the seller directly. But of course, it's going to be under a contract saying, I will put down 10%, I will give it to you, seller, and you are obligated to sell your house to me, only this person. Okay. And the buyer is obligated on that contract saying that I will buy or he will buy this property from him in such as such time. It could be 30 days, it could be 40 days, it could be 2 months. All depends what the situation is. Now, it's been in my radar for maybe a decade, the escrow. And since I deal with a lot of foreigners and they're buying here in Mexico, they're asking a little more than before. And the reason why is because, of course, yes, here in Mexico has actually happened some fraudulent transactions, and they want to be more secure with their money. And who to blame them? You know, they need to secure funds that they don't want to give to the seller because they don't feel secure. They're kind of like giving money away because there's they will be reinforced to give that money back in the same contract, saying that if you default or if you back up from the deal, you will have to give that money back and plus another 10%. That's from the seller part. Now, the buyer, if he backs up on the deal, he only loses his down payment, which is the 10%. I don't know if you follow that part.
Yes. Now, and I'm sure right now, whoever's going to be watching this, it's going to be alarm bells are like ringing
Yes.
all over the place. Because let's go back to the US version of the escrow. So let's say I'm going to buy your house. I could put a condition like I'm going to give you X amount of money, right? And with the condition that as long as I can get a loan. So there's a time period that if I cannot get a loan, I have to drop out of the deal and I get my deposit back. I'm thinking that's very scary in Mexico because unless you have cash and you know you can go through, but if you're depending on a bank loan in Mexico, and let's say they tell you kind of before you put the offer into the house, oh, yeah, no problem. We should be able to give you a loan. We should be able to close this loan in 30 days. And you start having hiccups or it doesn't go through, right? You're going to lose that deposit. But then I'm also thinking, let's say within that window period, you don't get the loan, right? You know that the time's coming up. Unless when you gave the deposit and the owner says, you know what, I accept that condition. If you don't get your loan, I will give you your money back. Um, but my only hesitation is, 10%, depending on the type of house, could be a lot, right? So you give someone 10%, what are the chances that because if they're selling the house, they need the money for something. They probably need to start moving to where they're moving. They have expenses and they chip away at that 10%. So when it's time for them to give you back the 10%, are you going to get your full 10% or are you going to get 90% of the 10%, 80% of the 10%, 50% of the 10%? And then what can you do? What is your remedy if we could do this scenario. Let's say I'm coming from California and I'm going to buy your house, right? And I have to put 10% down. There's no escrow, so it goes straight to you, right? And you were nice enough to say, you know what, Herman, I'm going to give you 45 days to get a bank loan. If within those 45 days you cannot get a bank loan, I'm going to give you your money back. That's how it kind of works at our escrow over here. So then before the 45 days, I come back to you and I say, you know what? I tried different banks in Mexico. I cannot get the loan. It is not going to happen. I cannot meet that timeline. So because I cannot get a bank loan and we agree on those terms, you have to give me my 10% back. And you give me 50% back of that 10%. What's my recourse?
Well, everything has to be in the promissory note, the contract. It has to
Yeah.
add to everything. We need to be very clear on the contract for you to be able to sign and give up, or at least put that money up front. Okay, so your down
Okay.
payment needs to be secured either way, whether if you give it directly to the seller or you give it to an escrow. Now, I'm not saying that escrow it doesn't exist or it cannot be used. Here in Mexico is very rare, more or less. No, it's rare. And I've been following this, like I said, for the last decade, and only a few companies in Merida will actually give you the service of an escrow or give you that service directly. Okay. But mostly is because people don't want to send money to Mexico. They want their purchase to be in dollars and they want to be paid in dollars. For instance, right now, as we speak, I'm actually making a deal. This deal, the owners, they bought their house 2 years ago, not even 2.5 years ago. And because of medical situations, they had to go back to the States. Now they're back in the States and they want to sell their house, but they don't want to deal with the currency exchange. They just saying, I'm selling my house in US dollars. I want my money to be sent to me, to my account in the US. Okay. And you as a broker, or us as brokers, or just the agent, needs to figure out how to help that client that is selling their home, and they don't want to deal with the dollar exchange or currency exchange and have the money sent to here to Mexico, and then from here take another chunk off because you're going to buy dollars, send it to your hometown. So the escrow exists, but it's mostly used when people are buying, but the seller is also an American or a Canadian or any other uh, um, uh, from any other country. Right now, the the seller that is selling this house, we're talking about $200,000. Okay, the seller doesn't want anything to do with pesos, so they want their money over there. But there's still things that they need to pay here, like taxes on their gains for selling the house. The company that is representing them, the other broker, they actually send us uh, uh, a questionnaire and more or less their conditions. You're buying this house in dollars. You must use our escrow or an escrow. There's about 3 people that actually can give you the service, 3 agencies, and it has to be sent to a U.S. account. Okay, and you need to pay so much money for the escrow. You need to pay another fee for the contract. You need to pay, so all those fees add up. So for your 10%, you will need to add the extra charges for the escrow, for the contract, for the down payment for the lawyer, etc. So the only reason why someone will use the escrow as a seller is because they don't want the money to be sent to Mexico. And the other reason, or the reason mostly the buyer will want to use an escrow, is because they don't want to give that 10% to the seller directly, because they don't know this person, they don't trust this person, they don't even if the agent says, well, yeah, I trust them, I have a contract with the seller, that he signed this contract saying that he is going to be um, straight with you and not take your money, but anything can happen anyway. So although if you have a contract, anything can happen, but you do need to have this clear, because otherwise if you start this process of selling and you don't have the services for the either buyer or the seller, you're stuck. You're going to be in a problem or an issue to where you're not going to be able to sell this house, but just because the seller will not receive pesos. Although you are selling a house in Mexico, which is going to be advertised in dollars, but you still sell it in Mexico, your deed would not say US dollars. Your deed will say Mexican pesos. You sold it. Well, he's not gonna even say this. He's gonna say you sold this at 3.5 million pesos. That will have to equal to your purchase price in US dollars. But that money is sent to an escrow in the US where they can send this money to the seller directly to their account, and that contract, it needs to be linked to this money coming into that escrow account, and that money needs to be linked to the escrow that is going to be sending this money to. Okay, so everything has to be in that contract. So our contracts here, I'm pretty sure in the States also, they got to be very meticulously, precisely, because we don't want any room to be a part of a discrepancy. Okay, so not a lot of attorneys are able to lock or at least reinforce every single clause to where you are as a seller protected, and the buyer is also protected. Now, what happens when you do not have an escrow? And what happens when you are selling, you are buying through a national, but you as a foreigner, what do? You still want the house, and it has happened already. It's been happening for the last, I've been here in this in Mexico and Merida more than 20 years, and it has happened before I even came down here. There was no escrow at all. Right now we have three. And today, the only way to sell this house is through that escrow. If we didn't have that escrow, the deal was not going to go with whomever. And actually, this is a niche, because if you have so many people interested in this house, but no one, not even maybe a foreigner, will want to send this money through an escrow account, it will not be sold. So you are in both sides in advantage and to disadvantage, because you're gonna find that person that is willing to go through an escrow account. Not everybody will, okay? But then again, coming from the States or Canada, they will be more willing to actually do this deal through an escrow, because they don't want to give this money to somebody that they don't even know, and they're not protected. What if anything happens? Who takes my money? How can I get it back? Just like you said, if the deal doesn't go through because I don't have, I didn't get the loan, then that's gonna be a clause. If I don't get the loan in 30 days, my money is my money. You don't get anything. I don't get penalized. But actually, you do need to get penalized.
Sorry, I didn't do that. You ended up getting a thumbs up bubble. That was very, very interesting. I don't know if you saw that.
That was live or what?
Yeah, yeah. There was just
Are we
like, did
live?
you see the? No, no, we're not live. We shouldn't be. No,
But
no.
why is it thumbs up?
I don't know. This is quite interesting. But no, we're
I
not
didn't
live.
I didn't give myself thumbs up.
Maybe it's AI. I don't
I don't
know.
know.
But
But
that's good. If the AI thought the information
yeah,
was
that's
great,
good.
that was interesting.
Let me finish this part where you were saying, what if I put a clause saying if I don't get my loan, I won't get penalized. You as a buyer, is this is what you're thinking as a buyer, right? But what about the seller? What does he gain from you not getting your loan? Now, let me talk to you about another contract that I did in the past, and not too long ago. That was actually December. Um, these were two nationals, okay? selling a piece of land with a small house and a buyer that has a company and wants to make his own offices in this land. It's well located. It has the meters that he wanted, and he's able to do whatever he wants in 3 stories building, whatever. But anyway, so they had the down payment as a 10%. And for me, I have to make sure that there is a penalty. I cannot let anyone go free without being penalized. Why? Because I won't get paid. If the deal falls through, either side, I just invested 2 months hoping that it will be sold. And then I take this property off the market just because someone said, oh, I may be able to get a loan. Well, you shouldn't be buying if you don't know if you're going to get a loan. You should get the loan first and then start buying. But that was a clause. Let's say, and the contract it said in one of the clause, the buyer will buy this property through a bank loan. Now, the next clause, to my understanding, it doesn't really matter if he does get the loan or not. I will put a clause is saying we are not waiting for that loan to be approved. There's really your responsibility for that loan to go through. But if it doesn't, you are obligated to pay this with your private money. If you don't do either or, then the penalty will be losing that 10%. Now, I can give you more time. Let's say we just put a time frame for 45 days. And then there's another clause in saying, if we are delayed by paper processing, nothing to do with the seller or the buyer, we can give you another 15 or 30 days. Okay? That gives you another month or another 45 days, regardless. But we agreed upon that time frame. Now, if it doesn't happen, then we as a buyer or seller, we decide. I can actually, as a seller, I can go ahead. Well, you had your time. I'm just gonna go ahead and just keep your money because you didn't come through. You didn't actually get the loan, and you're not paying it out of your pocket. So I'm gonna keep that 10%. So you're gonna have to be okay. It has to be a penalty. You cannot walk out of this deal not losing anything, because then nobody's gonna buy. Everybody's gonna be locking all those properties and they're not gonna be serious. I don't know if you follow that.
Oh no, I follow you. Um, One of the other conversations we should have in the future should be we should have a lender on to talk to them about how does this go, because it over here in the
Lender?
United States, you
Yeah.
get pre-approved, and a lot of people, and that's what you present to the seller, your pre-approval letter that you qualify for this much, and pre-approval sometimes don't mean anything. I would say the majority of the time they don't mean anything, because once you go to through the process, banks see you very, like interesting. Like I could have gone to the bank in December and they gave me a pre-approval letter. But then the bank's going to say in December you look good. We're in January now, so we need to take a look at everything all over again. And now they might say, you know what, we told you in December, you look great. You only have to put 5% down. We're going to give you a 95% loan. And then you go in February. Now they look at you again. They're like, oh, you know what? Now you have to put 20% down. So you're like, okay, I can still handle that. So then you go through escrow. You're right about to close, right? So you're at that 30, 40-day mark and you have a 45-day escrow, and they'll say, yeah, you're going to sign papers tomorrow, the next day, whatever. You know what? It's 23% down. You're like, "Whoa." You know, yeah, so it's a scary process
When you go through a loan.
when you go through a loan. Yeah, yeah.
Now, most of the
Because
buyers,
go
they
ahead.
buy, most of the buyers, they buy through a private investment, or I mean, their own money out of pocket.
Yeah. Well, they probably here in the US, you have things called self-directed IRAs. These self-directed IRAs are more like you're the custodian. So right now you can have an investment account. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Yeah, you weren't able to hear that, right? Good. Okay, because we're recording right now. So, okay, so what I was saying is that where was I at?
Well, let's. I think you were on the lender. I mean, last time you said it was the more money they want as a down payment, but let's just focus on the escrow.
Mhm.
Escrow right now in Mexico is not being um, executed as much as foreigners will probably want, because
Okay.
there are not options. It's only a few people that actually is offering, but the only reason why they do it is because they do have other activities in the US, and they are able to use this escrow for other things, I believe, in the US. But if you don't find an escrow account, and actually right now that I'm in a realtor association here in Mexico, they really honestly don't have that information as a part of a service. And I think it's gonna be a need that it needs to be pay attention to, in order for us to be able to give more security for the investors or whomever is gonna buy here in Mexico. Because if I give that information to my buyers saying you are a Canadian or a US or European, I don't care. If you tell them that your money is not gonna go to the seller until you sign the last paper, I think they're gonna be more comfortable buying than if they just put down a down payment, and the seller starts using that down payment. Usually in here in Mexico, the down payment, the 10%, is to cover some expenses to make sure that house is ready to be sold. For instance, um, a house that is being put in the market because it's old and it may have some debts on, I'm not gonna say liens. I'm gonna say probably the water bill is maybe 20,000 pesos because they didn't pay for so many years, or the property taxes, they're like 20,000 because they haven't paid that for several years, but they want to sell this house. So the 10%, if they say, well, this house is worth 1,000,000 pesos. Okay, well, 10% will be 100,000 pesos. Okay. So that 100,000 pesos will be used 20%, 20,000 pesos will be for the water bill. 20,000 pesos will be for the property taxes, and any other issue any other paper that needs to be updated in order for them to actually be able to sell this house. Okay. So like you said, that money is being used from the beginning, and just make sure that this house is being sold. Now, I actually gave you an example to where I'm selling a house with two liens, and he had a mortgage that it was already paid, but it was never canceled in the past, and the seller wanted to sell but didn't have the money to pay the liens. Now, no foreigner is gonna touch that. Even the attorney will say, no, do not pursue buying this property. But I managed to have a Canadian guy that wanted to buy this house. He knew about the liens. I told him the process, and I gave him the explanation step by step, what to do with that house in order for them to buy it. And he believed what I said. We went through the process and everything, and he became a bank. He actually put down the money. He put down a million pesos as a bank, and he put a lien on this house, gave this money to the seller in order for this seller to be able to pay the liens and get him off the house. Okay, and there was no escrow involved.
Okay, but now you mentioned something very interesting. So let's say, for example, let's say the 10% that I'm going to give someone in Mexico, can I put that 10% as a lien on the property?
Yeah, but it's gonna cost you more because it's a process. You are becoming a bank if you want to put a lien on the house. If you want to be a bank, let's say, for instance, the only reason why I actually got this person to become a bank, they can loan money and put a lien on any property. You didn't know this, but any foreigner can actually function as a bank and lend money to someone else to buy something, and they can put a lien on a property. In order for me to protect my client, the buyer, I was here in Mexico. You can represent both seller, buyer. I'm as a broker or as an agent, I can represent both, and it makes my life more easier because I know what they want and I know what the buyer wants. Okay, now in this case, since there was no escrow involved, and it could not be any escrow involved, is because the money needed to be used to pay some liens to get them off the property. Okay, so going back this process, you ask, can you put a lien just because you put 10% down on the house? No. In order for you to become a bank, you need to go through a process. You are giving a loan to this person, okay? And that will cost you give and take between the initial contract for the loan and the cancellation of the loan all together in a time frame, because it's not going to be a long term loan. It's not going to be a loan that you're going to have to give like 20 years to be paid. No, 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 no. You only doing it because you want to get the liens off the property, and it will be 6 months loan to a year month loan, and you need to actually pay that or at least clear it. So you're gonna pay both, the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, but I'm seeing it more like, let's say, the example you gave, equivalent to 200,000 US dollars, 10% is 20 grand. You could put, if you're going to give that to the owner, you could put that as a lien. Now it's recorded. Oh, hold on. This is my thinking. You can tell me if this works. You could put it as a lien. It gets recorded. The seller now, say if they need to use the money, if you go through, say I go through the whole process, then I just remove the lien because I'm technically on the bank. But if anything goes south, it's pretty much depending how we set up the contract. You're probably going to set up the contract in a way that no, you're out your money. We comply. This is the house. It was on you. But let's say whatever. Um, if I should receive my money back and I don't, that also prevents the owner from selling the house without you getting your money. So that could be something that maybe foreigners can do if they're a little bit hesitant that they're not using an escrow.
But now, if you actually go the route, you are adding more time to the process because the process of getting becoming a bank and letting someone borrow money from you, it delays this whole process maybe about a month and a half because of the process. So every single action you make to to uh to get something done, unfortunately they don't fall together at one time. They have to be paced. You have to give the time frame of that process to be executed and be recorded in the city hall or the public records. Okay, it's possible. I'm not saying that it's not because I've done it and
Okay, I see.
I'm doing it right as we speak. We're still in the process. We may sign this off, and it has only taken me less than 5 months to actually process this sale. When other agents or any other lawyer actually have taken a year and a half, and I'm doing it in a third period of the time that you actually are going to be waiting for this property to be yours. Anyway, so let's say there's no escrow involved. This is all about trust. I know my seller, I know my client as a seller, and I know my buyer. I have to give them that trust. They have to trust me. They have to know that I know what I'm talking about in order for this to happen. If they don't trust me, this wouldn't happen at all. For instance, I had a conversation with my with the buyer yesterday, and he's like, "Well, Agassi, I'm not. I'm coming down whether if we're gonna be signing or not the house on the 2nd of February." I was like, "Okay, well, we're not gonna sign it on the 2nd or before the 2nd. Okay, we're probably gonna sign on the 3rd or on the 4th." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna be there in Mexico already. So if I arrive on the 2nd, I'm not gonna be able to send the money on the 3rd or the 4th." I was like, "How long does it take this money to be transferred from Canada to Mexico?" He says 3 days. All right, well, you have to send this money a couple days before you leave the country, and the buyer, I mean, and the seller will not get it until probably the next business day or at least 2 business days. So if he sends it Saturday or Friday, Monday is going to be a business day. Tuesday is not going to be a business day here in Mexico. I have to check why not, but I was told that it was a holiday, and the 3rd will be a business day. So between the 3rd and the 4th, the money is going to be available in the seller's account. So that would be enough time to actually for this seller, I mean the buyer, fly down here, be here on the 2nd, and we sign either the 3rd or the 4th. Now, yes, the money will be sent to the buyer. He can actually kiss goodbye to that money. But because I know the seller and I have actually talked to her, I know where she lives, I know what she does, I know where she works, I know pretty much everything about her, and we've been in a relationship as a client and a professional throughout the last 8-9 months now, but the selling process, it has only been taking less than 6 months. Okay, so if she would have actually be a bad person, she would have take that $1 million and probably not even go through the process of paying the liens on the house. Okay, but anyway, what I'm trying to get to this is not a lot of people will actually trust the process here in Mexico because there's no escrow that they can trust, or at least put their money in that basket and knowing that that money is going to be safe if the deal goes down the drain. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that everybody has to actually have this trust on someone. And that someone, most of the time, is the agent. You trust your agent, you trust your seller, you trust your buyer, but then again, that doesn't mean that you're bulletproof. Okay? So, but they have done it this way for decades. No escrow at all in Mexico. You know what I'm saying, Herman?
Yeah,
It's
I
really
have
tough.
now I'm beginning to think how um Quintana Roo, does Quintana Roo work the same way? Because
But everywhere in
you
Mexico,
hear like,
they work as the same.
okay,
No
because
escrow.
you hear about Tulum just exploding and what is it? Is it Islas de Mujeres
Isla
right
Mujeres,
there?
sí.
Yeah. So I'm just going, wow, all those foreigners who went in and just bought this way and they're good. Um, it's interesting. It's
It
land of the
is.
brave.
So after this meeting, actually, I want to talk to you about the escrow and what can we do about this. But in reality, overall, whether if you have escrow or depository account, that's what they call it too, also, or you deposit this money to the seller directly, it all comes down to two things. One, having this contract bulletproof. Everything has to be in that contract. Who's who's involved? What accounts the money is going to? Where does the money coming from? How long does it take for them to actually make the deal? How long is it gonna be for the fideicomiso to be set up, or anything, even the inventory of the house. If you're gonna leave 20 spoons, you're gonna have to say there's 20 spoons in the house, and that's what you're gonna be getting when you buy the house. The house is gonna be empty. You're only getting the four walls and the shell. You know, that's what you're getting. So you gotta be very specific, but mostly specifically how the money is gonna be handled. You give me 10%, you give me the rest at the end of the sale. That's it. Okay. Or you're gonna give me 10% and then you're gonna give me a second payment in the middle of this month, and then you're gonna give me the rest at the end. I don't know. Whatever you want to do it is gonna have to be set in the contract. Okay. But the second part is the most, I think, is the most important one. Trust. You gotta know your client. You have to, you must know your client. You have to have this relationship to where you are completely sure that the seller, first of all, the seller, if you're representing the seller at the beginning, you have all these decisions already set up and dealt with and chose. I mean, you have to know whether they're gonna say yes or whether they're gonna say no. Like premeditating these reactions of the seller. Okay, you have to know what their reaction is gonna be when you bring someone that they're gonna be interested in their home. But now on the second part, the buyer, if you actually have the chance to actually get the buyer directly, then you have to build this trust with them, and you got to tell them, hey, I know I know the seller. The seller was able to sign a contract with me. The seller was is willing to give you this. The seller is willing to I don't know, making sure that the seller is willing, is working with you to have a clear picture of the transaction. Okay, it doesn't work that way all the time. But since I was able and I'm able to represent both, and even if I work with another agent, and if that agent is known between me and this other agent have done deals in the past, of course I'm gonna trust this person, because he has done things the right way, and I know how he works or she works, and they know how I work, and how we do things together. We become a team, okay? But it's always gonna have to be something more clear is gonna be on the contract. Always the contract. You need to know exactly what you're gonna put in that contract. We have a draft where we can actually change a few things. It all depends what kind of property is going to be sold, what things are going to be added or taken off, or what's going to stay in the house, or what other instructions you want to put in that promissory note that you said if I don't get the loan or I'm going to get my loan. Well, it doesn't really matter. You need to either tell us if you don't get the loan, you have to pursue to buy this property. And if you are willing to do that, you're gonna have to do it with your own money. But if you're not willing, why sign the contract when you don't know if you're gonna be able to? So escrow is not used 100% in every deal, but a lot of people is asking for escrow because they don't want to put their money someplace that they don't even know if they're gonna get it back if this deal doesn't go through, you know. And in the past, I mean, I've been selling houses for the last 15 years. So they have to work with you. They have to give that 10%. They have to.
Okay. Question for you. Have there been situations where you can put less than 10%?
Yes. I don't recommend it, but yes, it has happened before.
All right. The reason I ask is because maybe we should do one session on creative financing. I think, because over here in the US, it's not very common, but it does exist. Owner financing. So maybe we can have a session on that if you have ever done any of those.
We have
And
done owner financing, yes.
so we can see what the details are on that. So some of the buyers can maybe use that as an option. So I would like to, because we're at that 48-minute mark, 12 minutes. I would like for you to wrap it up, but then I'm gonna bring up some questions that maybe we can have a future session on.
Yes.
To see if like one of them would be just doing a session on owner financing. But go ahead, wrap this up so I could bring up those other questions.
Okay, well, one thing I can say about either having an escrow or not having at all the escrow, it's really up to the trust you have with the person that is helping you. Or even if you are actually buying on your own and you get to the point to you actually got to in touch with the owner, it has to be a compromise. You have to come to a point to where I want the house, you want to sell, So how can we do this without me losing that interest if we're not going to be able to come to an agreement? Always has to be in the contract. Everything that you have, any concerns, any questions, any doubts, the lawyer or the notary has to be clear on the contract. You need to put it everything that you think that is going to be helpful for you, but not over each party. For instance, you cannot be a winner or on every clause and having this other seller or the buyer being a disadvantage. You have to be equal, okay? And it will protect you. It will be bulletproof, but there's a chance. I mean, anyone can actually change their mind. It doesn't really matter. Even if they don't change their mind, it could happen something. Something can happen. Um, there's a clause that I actually added to my contract and my exclusivity. God forbid anything happens to me. What happens to that deal if it actually goes through? Where's that money going to? Who is this seller paying this commission to? So when I put on that clause in my contract saying, God forbid something happens to me or the seller, if the deal goes through, the money goes to my siblings. Okay, so if the seller, the God forbid something happens, and the deal was in the at the end, at the last stage of getting processed, my contract says, and in the promissory note also we can actually say it has to happen. They have to pay the family members, so it doesn't fall through at all. And not a lot of people actually put that clause. You know what I'm saying? So everything has to be in that contract, clear, crystal clear, to where everybody understands what's going to happen with you or without you.
That's
Pretty much what
interesting.
I want.
Okay.
Contract.
Wow.
It has to be clear.
All right. Well, if anybody has any further questions, I'm gonna put in the description your contact information so people can reach out to you directly. Um, I really got a very good understanding how escrow now works in Mexico. One of the topics that the questions when we were talking about escrow right now, that I was thinking is the first one we discussed, owner financing. Maybe we can have a discussion on that. Um, Another one that some people use here in the United States is it's lease with option to buy. I don't know if people have done that. So, for example, you want to buy this house, but the escrow scares you, right? So, what a lease option to buy would be, you know what? Maybe you might be open to leasing me your house for 6 months, a year, right? Um, and then in that lease agreement, there's that option to buy where some of the rent that you're going to be paying goes as part of that 10%, and it's an agreed upon price that you could sell the house. So that could be something else to ease some of the foreigners going in. But that has to be like in a little bit more of like time space where you want to move to Mexico. You're not maybe sure of the house, maybe the process scares you, but once you get acclimated, you're there, you see how things work, you might decide to um, exercise your option to buy the house within those 12 months. Do you kind of have an idea what I'm talking about?
Well, actually, it has happened in the past. I
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I actually have dealt with um, not owners financing because they didn't finance the house. They just agreed upon having part of the rent for the 12-month or 2-month or 24 months to be part of the 10% or at least a down payment. But all those deals are not regulated and actually they have to be private. So they have to be agreed within the two parties. It is not a program. It's not something that everybody gets their head around and start thinking, oh, I can actually rent for 2 months and then maybe buy the house. It's not an option, an open option in the business or in the real estate business. Uh, Basically, the most popular ones are going to be just the loans, the government loans, and buying property with cash. Hardly anybody wants, well, hardly anybody talks to you about owner's finance or rent to own as a possibility to rent and own the house in the future. What I know is uh what we call here, or it's a term that is not really regulated. They call it traspaso. It means that you're transferring the debt to someone for a large down payment, and then you continue paying these payments under the same name, under the same name that is that the credit was given to. That's a little complicated, but it has happened for people that, and is an option for people that don't have credit at all, and someone that it did, they had credit, but they cannot pay it anymore, or they don't want to pay it anymore, and they just want to get out of it, but they cannot. uh, I don't know why they won't sell, because a lot of people has been told not the right information, and this is what they actually offer. Oh, you can transfer your debt to someone. I personally think that is not a good idea, but it works for the people because they don't have the entire amount to buy this house. So they're willing to put a 40% down. And like, for instance, a house that is worth $1 million pesos. Okay. And the owner says, well, I want to sell it, but if someone comes along and says, transfer me your debt, if they give me what I want, I can transfer the debt and have them keep paying the loan under my name. It doesn't really matter. I give them the rights. I transfer those rights to this person. Okay, it has happened, and the only reason why they're actually going to be doing this is because they only have like the 40% of the value of the house. They don't have the 100%. So they give this 40% to the owner. She or he walks away with 400,000 pesos, but they bought a house for that is worth $1 million. Follow me? What I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think
But
for
I
some,
don't recommend that at all.
I can see how there's gonna be someone watching this, some foreigners might be interested in that, in the part where, you kind of have to look at the numbers, right? So like here, for example, in the United States, you can't really do that. There's some people saying that you can, there's tricks around it, etc. But normally, uh, to do something like that, the bank's going to make you qualify for the loan. So you're saying in Mexico, you don't have to qualify for the loan. Like the bank, I guess, in a way, doesn't
Well,
care. The loan is
right.
still, go ahead.
But hold on a second. I didn't say it was a bank loan. I I want to make that clear. It's only the government loan that is given, or
Okay, so it's a government loan.
it's
Kind
a
of like over
government
here, like
loan.
I guess you could say like an FHA loan, but FHA loans are still underwritten by banks. So, okay.
It's not a bank. A bank, and no one is gonna transfer their debt to someone coming from a bank. it has to be only what we call Infonavit. You have mentioned Infonavit before.
Yes,
You're
I have.
familiar with that term. Those type of loans that I'm talking about. Okay, but I can
Yes.
explain that in another session. But really, honestly, I just want to focus on the escrow account, the depository account, to where they're now there. It's a need in Mexico because a lot of foreigners are asking for it to secure their money. Okay, but everything has to be tied to a contract. It has to be clear.
Okay, so now, really quick, you mentioned 3 companies that you know of in Mexico that do these escrows. Now, are these companies just for Merida, or if you want to buy in other states, these 3 companies service different states in Mexico?
Well, I don't know if they actually service any other part of Mexico, but I know that they're being used here in Merida. I haven't got the experience, or at least to actually ask them if they actually do this activity somewhere else in Mexico.
Okay, okay. All right.
But we can ask.
Yeah. All right. So again, everyone, if you have any further questions, uh, please reach out to Mr. Agassini. I'm going to have his information in the description. And next week, we're going to cover a different subject that has to be, I mean, not that it has to be, but a different subject that is about real estate. So we're going to be doing this the whole year. Every week, we're going to try to put up a video that is real estate related to help you if you're thinking about purchasing in Merida, or technically, right, Mr. Ragazzini, anywhere else in Mexico. Just
Anywhere
reach
else.
out to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can. All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week, Mr. Agassini.
Hey,